What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Huddle Chat Sports Network's very own fantasy football huddle, presented as always by DanklyfeBrand. Let's talk sports and shank it golf brand. I'm your host as always, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo is my Nindo, and today we're going to be talking about those Week 10 stardoms and situms. I'm sorry things are coming a little bit later than I want them to this week, a little bit later than we'd all appreciate. As you guys can see here, I got a sling on my shoulder. I dislocated my shoulder at work a couple of days back, and really just been recovering these last few days. But I really wanted to make sure to bring you guys the information that you need. I wanted to bring out a trade episode this week, but I don't know if I'll be able to do that by Sunday. But we have some hot trade information coming out for you guys next week. But right now, we're focused on those Week 10 stardoms and situms. We're going to try to do this as efficient, as quick as possible for you guys. So without further ado, fill up your cup, roll something up, and let's get right into the stardoms and situms. Before I do, I got a viewer question I want to get to because it's very pertinent to what I'm getting ready to talk about. Elijah Ending asks, do I start Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy this week? Well, I want you to pay attention to what's coming up here, Elijah, because I'm getting ready to talk about both of them. First and foremost, my start of the week at quarterback is going to be Dak Prescott. Dakota Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys playing the Giants this week. He's put up 20 or more points in the last 2 weeks. He's put up 373 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. And the first time they played the Giants this season, they did hold Dak to only 6 points. But I want you to look beyond that because the Giants defense, or the Cowboys defense, scored all over the Giants offense, and Dak really didn't need to be involved. When you look at the past 6 games before this other game this season, the Dallas Cowboys' Dak Prescott has scored an average of 19 plus points against the New York Giants. He likes to beat the Giants, and the Giants are terrible. They're in an absolute tailspin right now, so I love everything about Dak Prescott this week. I do also like Brock Purdy. I'm starting Brock Purdy as well. He's been mediocre for the past couple of weeks, but I still like him this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars are allowing 6 quarterbacks this season to score 17 or more points, including 4 of them who have scored 20 or more. So I like Brock Purdy, but Dak is my start of the week. I like Dak better. So go with Dak for me there, Elijah. I'm also going to be starting Jared Goff against the Chargers. Typically, Jared Goff is great at Ford Field. He's great in Detroit at home and not so great elsewhere. But the matchup against the Chargers is too tantalizing to avoid for Jared Goff. They've allowed 5 quarterbacks to score 20 or more, and 4 of them at least 24 points. Jared Goff and the offense of the Detroit Lions are cooking, and this is potentially going to be a high-scoring affair. So I like Jared Goff this week. I'm also going to be starting C.J. Stroud versus the Bengals. We don't really got to talk much about that. Also, Elijah asked earlier about a different league, whether I like Baker or Will Levis. Well, to be honest with you, Elijah, I hate to say it again, but I like them both. If you guys need a streaming option, I'm starting Baker and I'm also starting Will Levis. I do like Baker more than Will Levis. Baker's been more consistent. Will Levis, if I've seen anything over these past couple of weeks, it's shown that he has an extremely high ceiling, but also a really low floor as well. Baker's been safe. He's put up 16 or more points in almost every game this season. I like Baker more than Will, but I'm starting them both as a streaming option if you need one in a pinch this week. As far as my sitting quarterbacks, I'm sitting Trevor Lawrence against the Niners. He's not really lived up to expectations yet this season. He's averaging less than 16 points per game. And although the Niners defense hasn't been the greatest over these last few weeks, they've been stumbling these last few weeks, they're still an elite defense. They just added Chase Young through their bye week last week, making their defense even stronger. And you're looking at them averaging 13.5 points per game to quarterbacks this season so far. Nothing's looking good for Trevor Lawrence this week, so I'm staying away from him. I'm also staying away from Russell Wilson against the Buffalo Bills. He's put up less than 14 points in 2 of his last 3 games, and Buffalo's been tough on quarterbacks. They're averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. So I'm not liking Russell Wilson this week. I'm also staying away from Mr. Massage, Deshaun Watson against the Baltimore Ravens. He's been underwhelming in these last 2 to 3 weeks since coming back from his injury, and he wasn't really that great leading up to his injury either. It's a bad matchup against the Ravens this season. No team has allowed fewer points per game to quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks than the Baltimore Ravens. I'm staying away from Deshaun Watson. I'm also staying away from both quarterbacks in the Germany game, Gardner Minshew and Mac Jones. Staying away from both of them. I'm staying away from Derek Carr against Minnesota. I'm staying away from Jordan Love against Green Bay. And now is not yet the time to start Kyler Murray in your lineups. Moving on, we're going to get into the tight ends. My start of the week at tight end is going to be Dalton Kincaid against Denver. He's put up 15 plus points in each of the games since Dawson Knox has been out. And with Dawson Knox out, the rookie has just been growing. He's heavily involved in the offense. It's a good matchup. The Broncos are allowing the second most fantasy points per game to tight ends this season. So plug Dalton Kincaid in all formats, in all leagues. I'm also plugging Taysom Hill, man. He's put up four straight games with a good stat line. He's been a Swiss Army knife. He's throwing touchdowns, catching touchdowns, running touchdowns, blocking for touchdowns. He's helping the Saints win football games, and he's going to help your fantasy football team win this week if you need him to plug him into your starting lineup. I'm also starting Dalton Schultz. Look, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I got to look you in the eyes and be honest with you. I was wrong about Dalton Schultz from the Houston Texans at the beginning of the season. I said Dalton Schultz was only a good tight end last year because of the Dallas Cowboys scheme. The same reason I've been tooting the Jake Ferguson horn all season. But Dalton Schultz has put up 13 or more points in all but one game this season. He had an amazing game last week. And Cincinnati right now, this week, his matchup is allowing 16 points per game to tight end. So I'm definitely going with Dalton Schultz as well this week. I'm also going to be going with Trey McBride against Atlanta, Jake Ferguson against the New York Giants, Logan Thomas against the Seattle Seahawks, and Jonnu Smith against Arizona. Now, I want you to pay attention to that Jonnu Smith pick because we're going to be talking about his running mate here a little bit later as well. My sit of the week at tight end is going to be David Njoku against the Ravens. David Njoku's been on fire these last few weeks. However, it's a bad matchup, and a bad matchup is a bad matchup through and through. Only one tight end against the Baltimore Ravens has a touchdown, and only one tight end has put up more than 11 points against the Baltimore Ravens defense. So David Njoku, things are not looking well for him this week. I also, going back to what I was saying with the Jonnu Smith pick, I'm staying away from Kyle Pitts if I can. He's fallen out of favor. He's fallen off the face of the earth. Again, with Drake London out last week, Jonnu Smith was still the number one target in the offense, which is absolutely insane for who we thought was going to be Megatron reincarnated. Arizona has been a lot tougher on tight ends than you would actually think they were. So things are just not looking for Kyle Pitts this week in a potential low-scoring, uninteresting game. I'm staying away from Kyle Pitts. I'm also staying away from Luke Musgrave against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a popular waiver wire ad this week. I've been talking a lot about him as well. But this week is just not a good matchup. Pittsburgh is allowing the fifth fewest points per game to tight ends this season. So I'm staying away from Luke Musgrave if I can this week. I'm also going to be staying away from my boy Cade Otton versus Tennessee, Chigo Okonkwo versus Tampa Bay, Irv Smith Jr. versus Houston, and Michael Mayer versus the New York Giants. As far as defenses we're going to be talking about, we're going to blow right through these for you. We're going to be talking about starting the New York Giants defense versus the Raiders. We're talking about starting the Seahawks defense versus the Washington Commanders. I'm starting the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Packers. And I'm starting the Saints versus Minnesota. As far as sitting defenses, I'm staying away from the Jags against the 49ers, the Bengals against Houston, the Chargers against Detroit, the Commanders against Seattle, and Denver against Buffalo. Now that is actually going to do it for part 1 of 2 of our startums and situms of week 10. I'm going to be putting them out both about the same time, so don't you worry, you're not going to be missing much. They're going to be coming out almost simultaneously. So make sure you click on part 2 where we talk about the running backs, the wide receivers, as well as the place kickers. And we're going to be talking about some more viewer comments as well. So thank y'all so much. Make sure you like the content if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And don't be afraid to ask questions because I try to answer everybody's questions. Thank y'all so much for tuning in, and keep your chin up and your attitude down. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.